Hey, this is Dave with Taboo Customs. This video today we are going to be doing another Can We Save It repair on this 2001 Ford F150 Super Crew Cab here behind us. This should apply to the 97 to I believe 2003 Ford F150s, especially of course the Super Crew Cabs here as we're going to see, but probably a lot of the other models you'll be able to get some information on as well. So make sure you check out our website Taboo Customs for some of these kits that we're going to be installing and some of the other parts. We will try to put most of the parts that we do purchase in the description of this video if you are looking for those parts, and be sure to leave a like and subscribe for us on this channel. It will greatly help us out. Anyway, let's take a quick look at what we're dealing with. All right, on these Ford F-150s here, the frame from the front to about the midpoint of the front doors is a boxed-in frame, which is what probably people are used to seeing nowadays, because most all frames are boxed in. After that, though, this section all the way to the rear is actually a Form C, which typically is better at shedding material and doesn't rust out as much, but that's not the case actually in these Ford F-150s here. Back here, there's a common issue where right here there's a seam. There's a front section of C-formed frame, and then you've got this rear section, you know, and they probably did that because different lengths of beds and different models, they just used a different rear section and kept the front section potentially the same, or vice versa. I don't honestly completely know, but I'm sure that's probably why they're trying to make it a little bit modular. But the issue is this back section here will rust out often in the front section, like on this truck, and we've just done some real quick preliminary looks. It's pretty good, but this back section here, as you can see on this side, is bad. You can see where it's got a huge hole here. Someone's already done a little bit of repair, but then let's look at the other side and see really how bad these can get. Well, on the driver's side here, we're looking at quite a bit worse. You can see that the large hole is not just up by the front part where this mounts, it continues to go back along the frame rail, and then actually back in here where there's a cross member also is a really bad spot where there's really not much frame. Actually, honestly, that piece of angle someone welded up there is probably really the only thing holding the frame back there. So we'll be going in, we'll end up having to remove those pieces of angle. We'll put all new kits in this, but first what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead, we're going to remove the bed, we're going to remove the fuel tank, the bumper, get this stripped down to where we can get a real good look at it and start to get to working on our repairs. So we'll be back once we get that done. Well, we're back, and we've got the rear bumper gone, which really had to come off to be able to get the bed off. So the bed's off. And the fuel tank is now out. So now with all of this out, we can get a much closer look and talk about this in a little bit more detail as far as what the issues are. Now right here is the seam that I talked about. And you can see a vast difference between the piece of frame here and the piece of frame up here. And in the original OEM design, this frame section here is quite a bit thicker than this section back here. See, this back here is actually still pretty well the stock thickness. This up here is probably pretty close to 7 gauge. Now this rear frame slides into this forward piece of frame, and then it's basically riveted here in a bunch of different places. And this, for some reason, this back piece of frame here, they like to rust more. I don't know if it's a coatings issue, material issue. Yeah, hard telling, but you can see here we don't really have much rust with this piece here. Even where this normally, like you'd see a lot of rust just because this was all rusting here anyway. It'd kind of bleed over sort of into this other piece of frame. So definitely something different between those two. But anyway, so we're going to eventually end up basically plating from tying up into that piece, the front frame, all the way back to the very end here. And looking at this side, looking at the damage, you can see how bad this is for a good, first foot of frame there. Then when we get back here, you can see some other interesting issues. And I think I figured out why and how they came about, that they put a bunch of angles on here. Right here, this is actually cracked all the way across the bottom. And then I noticed that the rear cross member here, which this is one big huge cross member, we'll talk about that in a minute, that cross member is cracked all the way across here, over here, up into here. And someone went in and re-welded this and re-welded. It's on the other side. You can see where they blew through here because there's not much left with that cross member there. And then they probably went in and added this angle at the same time, because more than likely the frame probably actually broke, is what my guess would be. So anyway, moving on back here, you can see how bad that is, and that's not uncommon when frames rust, where there's cross members and stuff attached, the welding and different things, and then accumulation of debris in there also will cause rust to just you know, speed up that rusting process. But you can see all of the, you know, holes back in here. Now this shackle hanger, this one doesn't look too bad, but I would almost guarantee that when we go, because we will take this off because we want to plate front to rear, bolt a new shackle hanger on, almost guarantee I take this off and this here will basically just come apart. And I'm guessing that's going to be really thin once we're done. And we know that even looking over here on this side has already started to rust through. So you know these are getting to be in pretty bad shape. Now this side frame rail isn't nearly as bad as the driver's side. Of course, we got a little, you know, almost fit our hand all the way through there. Size hole up here at the front, obviously not good. But anyway, not nearly as bad as what the driver's side was. Now let's talk about this rear cross member a little bit. We'll talk about this piece up here as well. So rear cross member is another common piece that's going to rust, and you can see here this you know, all rusted out here. Of course, we already talked about that. You know, it's all rusted out here. You know, it's just paper thin, falling apart. I'm guessing that doesn't work. I'd probably say, you know, you can see how it's actually splitting apart. So probably because some of these things in there are all screwed up and somebody probably cranked on it. And it, anyway, so rear cross member is kaput. Now, you can buy that rear cross member. However, they're like $350, $400. They're pretty darn expensive. So with this truck, we're actually going to work on designing up some a new rear cross member system. We're going to try to go ahead and integrate this the winch into it as well. So that's something we're going to do new with this truck. We'll take a look at this. I don't know if we can buy this piece. Gosh, but what's going on up here is you've got the evap canister for the fuel tank here, and this piece was added because the rest of the stock cross member is supposed to be, you know, down in here where my hand is occupying the same space now, but it's gone. And actually this doesn't even, it's just laying in there. This piece is supposed to like hold it down in there over here, but it's also rusted off and it's just kind of hanging out there. So yeah, I don't know, we may try to design a new bracket for that as well. But I mean, we got a lot going on with this one because we'll try to get this mount somewhere in here. We'll see, hopefully we can get it there. But then we also have to work in a mount for this shock as well. So as we go through there and do that, we're going to want to try to integrate that too into that. So anyway, yeah, we'll work on that. And what we're going to do now is we're actually going to probably do some painting and some scanning so that we can work on that cross member piece, and then we'll probably get to cleaning some of this up and yeah, get started on the dirty part of the job. All right, so we're back and we've gotten the front section of this rear here fixed on this Ford. You know, these are the kits that we've got available on our website, taboocustoms.com. These are 7-gauge plates, so gosh, almost twice as thick as the material that was existing there on the truck. On this side, we did have a bit of an issue. When we went and we cut that piece of angle that was going across here, that was really all that was holding this frame rail at the top. So the frame rail actually dipped down like this because it's broken up here at the top, and I can take a look at that here from the backside in a second. But we ended up tacking a piece of angle across there just to hold it in place while we put our new kit up here. Luckily, these frames pretty well flat, even though it is a little bit weird. If you look at these frames, the frame rails, while they're flat on top, they are not straight. They're not parallel to each other. They both sides angle inward. So up there at the front, it'll be like 40 some inches. Back here, it's like, I don't know, 35 inches or so. You can see that for us, since the frame is kind of a limp noodle, we just used a plate back here. You can use the bumper to hold that rear spacing, but here in the next set of kits will be a little bit more interesting, and I'll talk about that in a second. And here you can kind of see a little bit what we did was we actually ended up cutting out that whole area. We also cut out the area behind this mount because that was so rusted out. We needed to make sure that we got that front part of that mount connected back in. And you can also see one thing we do highly recommend when you're doing these. You can see kind of the white paint. That is a Weld Thru primer. We use that on the inside of all of our kits, and we also spray it on the frame after we clean up the rust and whatnot. And that is really to make sure we try to get a coating in there to prevent rust between the two panels in the future. Here you can see the driver's side, which we did end up cutting a pretty large section of this out, but in general, that driver's side was still holding, at least up there at the front. Now though, we're going to start working on the rear, and that is a totally different story at the rear. And it's going to be kind of interesting. We'll come back after we clean up some of this, but let's talk a little bit about what we're looking at here and what I think we're going to have to do. Now, being that this broke, and I think I already talked about this, looking at it closer, this little piece of angle right in here is the only thing that's been holding this back section of frame to the front section. I'm pretty certain if I go and cut this right here, there's nothing. This down here is all still broken. It was not connected back together, not welded. I don't know if it broke before or after they added this, but really we don't see much benefit in keeping any of this, honestly. That side's a different story. We'll get to that in a second. This here is all paper thin, all of it. You know, there is not much. If I took a center punch and hit it with a hammer, it punch right through that. It is so thin. So we're going to do something a little different. We're actually going to cut this off and just use our kit. Our kits are actually designed for more like this side, where we're going to do, you know, an overlay. However, in a pinch it would work. In those cases, again, our kits are all 7 gauge. We're using 7 gauge, going a whole lot thicker than what this material was. Here, you know, mainly make sure that we do overkill the fix, because, you know, we don't want to have an issue in the future, and to make it last much longer. Now, we will also be replacing this whole cross member. We did get a cross member design, did get a new mount designed for that what appears to be an evap canister up there. So we'll take a look at that after we get installed. We will be doing a separate video for the installation of these kits and this cross member. So if you're looking for more detail, check out the link in the description of this video, and you'll be able to find more detail on that. But here we're just kind of trying to show you a high level overview of what we're getting done. So now we need to get to doing some work. Well, we're back, and we cut out the bad parts of the frame, which pretty much leaves us almost with no frame. Essentially, you know, here's all the stuff we cut out, and honestly, you know, a lot of it was barely hanging in there. If you look, there's just one little weld there, one little weld holding the top of that cross member. I mean, a lot of this, there wasn't much there. So, you know, really, we're not, I know it looks like a lot, but we're not missing much. Trust us, here in a second it'll look a whole lot different. All right, so we're back, and a whole lot different, right? I mean, I'm sure that people were just watching this video and seeing how much of the frame we'd cut out and going, oh my, I don't see how you're going to come back from that. And I will tell you that this is a fix, especially if you have to cut the frame rails off. One that's probably not for your faint of heart. If you don't have some fabrication experience, welding experience, may not be something you want to tackle, because this is fairly involved. But I think once you take a look at it, you're going to see that now this frame is, you know, and our goal is always to make them stronger than they came from the factory with. So you can see up here was our original kit that we added to the front section. Again, all of this is 7 gauge, whereas the original frame was probably about 12 gauge or so. So almost twice as thick as the original frame. Of course, on this side we have the original frame up to about here, and then we started really just our kit is the rest of it, whereas on that side, and you kind of see the frame rail inside there, we do have the frame along that whole section. Again, we use a weld through primer, you know, underneath these plates, underneath this plate, you know, on the inside of here, and you kind of see it over there. You know, weld through primer anywhere we could to make sure that we got a coating between each of the plates, because you want to prevent the moisture from causing rust between those plates. Coming back, then you can kind of see our new cross member that we've added, as well as the new tire winch mounting, the new rear section of the cross member. So what we did is we, you know, used the bolts to help us to align everything. So especially with this side, there was a lot of alignment. And if you go to our video of the installation of this, we go through a lot of that. You know, we aligned it this way, up, down, you know, everything. And there's a lot of checking. The distance, of course, we had to set as well. So a lot of checking with that, and having it be able to initially be bolted gives us the ability to put everything together, get everything lined up, start getting it tacked into place, and then come back and finish weld. So now what we've done is anywhere there was a joint such as this next to our bolts, we did go ahead and we did weld all of those joints down here, you know, even in here we basically stitch welded this piece in. But you know, getting all of this welded back up, and now it is very solid, as you can see.